All right, so one of the things that I've offered in some of my past videos, and probably most people don't really understand what I mean by this. Science is on my side. Yes, science is on the side of me, the theist. Now, so how could you possibly mean that, Craig? Well, everything that I'm going to point to in my videos to come, in this particular video, is I'm never going to go outside the realm of established fact. Science is right on the cusp of understanding everything that I am telling you, of understanding religious phenomena in all of its fullness and all of its import. Science is right on the cusp of it, and everything I'm telling you, I'm basing off of established fact, things that you all know are true. All I'm going to be doing is connecting the dots in ways that a lot of people wouldn't have thought of. That's it. That's all I'm doing. So, let's go back to our friend Jimmy. Jimmy, who is Jimmy? Jimmy is our resident perennialist. And Jimmy has provided me with something like 600 or 700 links, okay? And I've started to explore them. Now, the first 6 links I've clicked on of what he's provided me. Again, if you had his links and you were just clicking and you knew how to connect the dots of the stuff that this is all established facts, you would start to understand exactly what I was talking about if you knew how to connect the dots for yourself. So, for example, one of the things I clicked on, he's on, what show was it? Talk Heathen. And he's talking with Kyle Curtis and Jamie. Kyle Curtis, name from the past. So he's talking with them about a mystical experience in his own life. Now, he shopped it around a couple of times on different shows. And one of the things that he's shopping around is there's the mystical experience that he had, and then there's these studies at Johns Hopkins University. And what happens in these studies is scientists in a lab are able to induce mystical experiences, and I believe in 85% of the people who they work with. So they're able to induce these type of experiences in people. Now, immediately, atheists being atheists, they both jump to, gee, what a surprise. Well, this doesn't back up God. This just proves that God doesn't exist. Would that it were so simple, cowboy? Honestly. They both jump to, they do a much milder version of a Matt Dillahunty, but it's still the same idea. They jump to debunk, dismiss, discredit. Debunk, dismiss, discredit. Obviously, here is the same thing at work. Jimmy is introducing new information to both of them, and they aren't listening to it and aren't processing. They're just trying to see how it matches their preconceived notion that God does not exist. Oh, this just backs up that God does not exist. And they don't really listen to the information, don't process it correctly, and, kind of dismiss it. So, let's examine it correctly as rationalists actually would and scientists actually would. So what is he offering them? He is offering them studies from Johns Hopkins University, okay, where scientists are able to induce a mystical experience in people. Now, this matches something that deconverted man himself can go on for 3 hours about. There is something that deconverted man himself will tell you called a God helmet or something like that. And what it is you put this helmet on. Richard Dawkins himself has worn the helmet. Like I'm saying, nothing I'm going to tell you is not outside the boundaries of established fact. Richard Dawkins himself has put on the helmet. Now, what does the helmet purport to do? It does something to your brain chemistry. I think it's electromagnetic waves or something like that. And it induces a mystical experience in 85% of the people who wear it. Isn't that interesting? Now, Kyle is saying, well, that actually proves that God doesn't exist. Again, not so fast there, cowboy. Hasn't proved anything yet. But what's so interesting about 85% of the people who put this helmet on have exactly what I describe in my prayer closet. What is that, Craig? I say, I go into my prayer closet and what happens? I have a powerful, subjective, internal experience, 150% real to me, that I am convinced is God. Somebody puts on the helmet. What happens to them? They have a powerful, subjective, internal experience, 150% real to them, that they are convinced is God. And that happens in 85% of the people. Why is that number significant, Craig? Because when I told you that I'm going to be able to reproduce this on YouTube, take a low-resolution spiritual experience, which almost everyone listening to me has had, teach you to turn it up to 100, so that it's a high resolution spiritual experience, I actually threw out a ballpark figure. And isn't it interesting? It's the exact same number. I said roughly 85 to 95% of you will come to believe that that is God. Doesn't prove anything, Craig. Doesn't prove anything. Can't be God, can't be God, can't be God. All right, you're still getting way ahead of the curve there, so calm down. Calm down, all you atheists. No, can't be God, Craig, can't be God. See, because if you can put down okay, calm down. Now, why is this all significant and how does this all tie together? So, let's take Jimmy as an example. I believe he said he started out as an atheist. And he had a mystical experience that I believe was through peyote or mescaline or some type of hallucinogen in a controlled environment. I'm not quite sure if he was in a lab and they induced this experience in him or he just took mescaline or something. I'm not exactly sure on the mechanics of the actual experience itself, but I'm pretty sure that's what he's saying happened to him. And now he's a generalized theist. Why? Because he had a powerful, subjective, internal experience that he was 150% convinced was God. Simple, huh? Well, but if a drug can induce it, then it can't be God. Don't be so sure there, cowboy, and slow down. Legitimate scientists don't go way out ahead of the facts, do they? No, they stay pertinent to the facts and the information. So far, we all agree on the information that I've revealed. And I'm just going to reveal more information. All I'm going to do is connect the dots. Now, I go back to me. I go into my prayer closet. What happens? I have a powerful, subjective, internal experience that I am convinced is God. What is interesting about this? Altered states of consciousness. When you take peyote and you have a mystical experience, what is happening? You're having an altered state of consciousness. When you induce in somebody mystical experiences in a lab, what are they doing? They're altering their states of consciousness. Again, science is on my side. This is established scientific fact. The helmet is established scientific fact. All I tried to tell you, prayer is a form of altered consciousness. What's interesting about it is that it's a form of altered consciousness that I can induce in myself at will. Oh, how interesting, Craig. Yeah, it really is, isn't it? See, have you connected the dots yet? Prayer is an altered state of consciousness. I can induce it in myself at will, which means I can alter my state of consciousness so that I, as I report it, can have at will a powerful, subjective, internal experience that I am 150% convinced is God. Now, all I told you is that I'm going to be able to have videos up sometime in the next year where you yourself will be able to click on the link and have a high resolution, really powerful spiritual experience. And I said 85% of you are going to be convinced that it's God. Why? Because that seems to be the ballpark figure. Put the helmet on and it messes with your brain chemistry, alters your consciousness. And people go, I really think that's God. You can't decide whether it's God or not outside of the experience. Once you start having the experience, then you can decide for yourself. And guess what? You're going to decide, yeah, that really does seem like it's God. Because that's exactly what happened to me when I went to church. It's exactly what happened to me when I went to church. It's exactly what I said happened to me when I went to church. I had a really powerful, internal, subjective experience that I was 150% convinced was God. We call it a spiritual experience. Most of the atheists have had spiritual experience when they were religious, but they were really low-resolution spiritual experiences where you can't decide one way or the other. It's not enough. Now, let's take another look at this. Let's talk about the numinous one more time. Here's another variation on the numinous experience that I had that I just remembered about. So once upon a time, one summer, I was taking a Eurail across Europe, and I was in Paris. The summer ended, and I was in Paris, and yeah, good life, huh? Staying in Paris for a week at the tail end of the trip. I'd taken a Eurail around Europe for the summer. And in Paris, there's the Louvre Museum. Now, what happened was, in the basement of the Louvre, there are these paintings known as Monet's water lilies. Now, these are real paintings, and they're huge. So you go in the basement, you sit down in the basement, you're surrounded by about 30 paintings, and they're roughly 15 feet tall by like 5 to 7 feet. So they're gigantic. and then cover the basement wall. So it's a really powerful aesthetic experience. One of the most intense aesthetic experiences I've ever had in my life. Now, as I've said in other videos, if I had brought more to the table, see, I was just a typical 20-year-old doofus. You know, thought I was cool because I listened to like Public Enemy and Nirvana. Yeah, I'm so cool, man. I listen to Public Enemy and Nirvana. Yeah, just like everybody else. But you know, all of us thought we were cool for doing the exact same thing that all of our friends did. So how that works, I'm not sure, but that's exactly how it worked. I honestly thought I was cool because I listened to Public Enemy and Nirvana. Oh, I was so cool. So did all your friends. Yeah, I don't know. I guess they're cool too. So I wasn't really bringing a lot to the table. Had I been a student, I vaguely knew who Monet was. I vaguely knew what the water lilies were. I had a general idea of Impressionism, and Monet, if you don't know, is probably the leading Impressionist, probably the most famous of the Impressionists. Is he the best? Renoir, Monet, probably people would debate between those two, but he's one of the most famous, and he's one of the most impressive in terms of what people usually think of when they think of Impressionism. It's very, very aesthetic. Impressionism a lot of people like because it's really, really beautiful to look at. And the pictures themselves, the experience of seeing these gigantic water lilies, these gigantic, flowers on the wall of the Louvre while you're sitting in a couch is aesthetically, it's really overwhelming. It's really powerful. Now, had I brought more to the table, it might have been even subjectively 100 times more powerful. I might have brought more in terms of clarification if I had some type of really in-depth intellectual understanding of what I was looking at. In other words, if I had been a student of art and really, really had a full appreciation of who Monet was in terms of art history and how important his paintings were and how he worked with lights and things like that and what Impressionism actually entailed. I have vague ideas about all of it, but not very in-depth. So I wasn't bringing a lot to the table. I was just a typical doofus American. But even as a typical doofus American, this was a really powerful aesthetic experience. Now, as I've tried to say with the numinous experience, I'm trying to connect this down to real life. I used the example of being in a Santana concert. I used an example of being at the Church of Westminster Abbey. The numinous experience is a down-to-earth experience that you can have as a human being on planet Earth. All that's really happening is that you, the human being, are bringing more sensitivity to bear to give an experience and kind of experiencing life in all of fullness of all of its dimensions. Rather than typical way we experience life is like kind of a kind of a doofus. Most of us go through life as kind of Homer Simpsons. Donuts, even when we're at Paris, even when we're at the Louvre, the croissants there, we're morons like that. Even that particular day, I bet you $1,000 I was more interested in whatever girl I was trying to hook up with that night, and we're at the Three Ducks Hostel. I bet you the place still exists. There was the place I was staying in that was a youth hostel that was phenomenal. There was kids from all over the world. Like people all traveling, and it was, I think, the equivalent of $10 a night at the time. And there was a huge courtyard in the middle of the place, and you'd hang out with people from all over the world and drink every night. It was fantastic experience. Like I said, I fell in love with life a long time before I started looking for God. Unbelievable summer, and I bet you anything I was more interested in who I was trying to hook up with that particular day than I was in the water lilies. But even as a doofus, the aesthetic experience was so overpowering that it made a really big impression on me. That's all that a numinous experience need be. That's all that a numinous experience need be. I'll give you an example from an atheist. He started talking a spiritual experience, and this just to underscore how easily available this is. And how nothing has been proved yet. Yet. Everyone relax. No less of an atheist in good standing than Objectively Dan himself on a show with Matt Dillahunty. They both start talking about spiritual experiences. And Objectively Dan starts talking about the time he almost became a Hare Krishna. I kid you not. He went to a Hare Krishna meeting, and they started doing the chants and singing the songs, and lo and behold, Objectively Dan's getting really into it. You know, you could just imagine it. Here he is like, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Peace, flowers, freedom, happiness. Yeah, you can just see him there banging a tambourine. What does he report? He starts to have a bit of a trance-like experience or go into some type of a altered state of consciousness. Again, really easy to induce in a human being. Really easy to induce in a human being. And really easy to turn up to 100. Did he become a Hare Krishna on the spot? No. But did he report an altered state of consciousness? Yes. All that I do when I go into my prayer closet is induce some form of a mild altered state of consciousness. In altered states of consciousness, people attach symbolic religious iconography to the experience. So they automatically start reporting supernatural experiences. Why? Because they attach the religious iconography that they have been raised in to the experience. That's the language of the subconscious mind. So I, the Christian, go to my church. And all that a church is doing that's having powerful experiences where people are actually, really, really reporting powerful experiences of quote-unquote God is they are altering the consciousness of the people in unison. And as I explained in the other video, this isn't rocket science. I put you right smack dab in the middle of a powerful spiritual experience. Keep in mind, this is subjective and it's internal, but it's all really peaceful. And I don't know how Dan, whether he was enjoying it with the Hare Krishnas, because, that's a little bit weird. But you put it in a context where you feel safe and comfortable and everybody enjoys the experience. I report nothing but peace of mind. You give me 2 hours to do my prayer thing, and I'll go into my prayer closet, and all that happens is I get 100% more at peace with the world and 100% more trusting that there is a sovereign being in charge of everything. So I don't have to worry too much about, everything, basically, how to make ends meet or whatever. That's it. There's nothing all that outlandish happening. And there's another subject that's coming up soon that I'll talk about with religion in terms of mental illness. What you are actually connecting to is the exact opposite of mental illness. It is the deepest place of sanity that you can find. It is a sanity that is irresolute, unmovable. It's a sanity that you can connect to at will. It is a sanity that connects you to the greatest thought processes of the greatest writers in the history of the world. Hello? Yeah, not some sort of mysterious coincidence that most of these people were practicing religious people. Talk about your Shakespeare, your Johann Sebastian Bach. Probably Monet, I don't know for a fact, but it wouldn't surprise me. Rare that you find a really powerfully creative person that is an atheist, that has said there's nothing past this world. Why? Because it's really hard to channel the full creativity that's available to the human being if you don't think there's anything past the material world, at least subjectively. And once you start taking those journeys into the subconscious mind, most people start to report that they experience something along the lines of the transcendent. Now keep in mind, I'm keeping this all really vague and ecumenical on purpose, recognizing that I'm talking to atheists. At least some of you are atheists. So I'm deliberately avoiding religiously charged language. Jesus is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. Deliberately avoiding stuff like that. Why? Because it tends to trip you out. Everything I have just said is established fact. Not a single thing I have said has required any faith. All I'm doing is looking at the evidence correctly and processing it accurately, as opposed to walking to the evidence with the preconceived notion God does not exist. Therefore, all of this evidence only further demonstrate that God does not exist, even if it seems like he does. That's more or less what's going to start happening. You're going to have to bend over backwards to try to prove me wrong, and it isn't going to work. Because all I'm doing is connecting the dots. And, I'm not sure if that was that clear from this particular video, but again, doesn't matter. This isn't rocket science, and I'm not telling you anything all that outlandish. And if Jimmy posted for you 600 links, and you clicked on 7 of them, you'd start to piece it together for yourself. What happened? He went on some sort of a mystical journey, wherein he decided, hey, wait a minute, this is subjective, powerful, internal, real to me. I think God exists. Said, this Johns Hopkins study, when they induce these experiences in people, they go from atheist to theist. They don't go from atheist to, Ken Ham, Ken Hovind. They don't start becoming Noah's Ark Christians and come out and say, the earth is 6,000 years old. That's not what they said. It's not what happens. They go from atheist to theist. Part of which, because the defensiveness of, can't be God because I don't want to be a Christian because I hate Christians, goes away. That's a huge part of it, I promise you. I can't be God because I don't want to become a Christian. Christians are so stupid. That's a huge part of it. You take away all the emotional baggage and you just examine the phenomena honestly, and 85% of you are going to come to the same conclusion. Why? Because it ain't rocket science. It ain't rocket science. Keep in mind, this was a majority opinion. And by majority, I mean something close to 95% of the world population thought it so for millennia. It's only relatively recently that a couple of Weisenheimers been like, no, couldn't be. Why? Because the evidence, there's no evidence. Well, now there's starting to become evidence. That's the point. Actual, real world, tangible evidence. And I'm not 100% sure I completely connected the dots clearly in this particular video. But not 100% sure it really matters. Why? Because this is going to be the only video I make. Debunk at will. Doesn't make any bit of a difference. Really doesn't. Debunk at will, because the facts are on my side, just as I said. I'm not sure if I completely spelled it out for you correctly in this video. Doesn't matter. There'll be a video next week, and tomorrow, and the day after that. And I'll go back to the subject. And more importantly, I will start running experiments on this channel in real time where I have, I post something where I think you may actually be able to have your own version of a numinous experience. Again, nothing wildly outlandish. Numinous, I'm going to freak out. No, nothing like that. Nothing like that. Just being in the basement of the Louvre and going, wow, these paintings are so beautiful. Strike you as anything all that terrible or outlandish? I might do something really down to earth. Start with like Beethoven's Ninth, Second Symphony. Post it on here with some of my own little concoctions. See if that doesn't do it itself. See what people report. I'm going to experiment with this. But I promise you, within 2 years, this will be up and running at full strength. And a lot of people are going to believe it's God. Really, honestly, a lot of people are going to believe it's God. Because I'm just going to take you to how people get the experience. That's it. It's not rocket science. People are reporting the experience in this variety of different circumstances with some of the same underlying themes, same underlying principles. And once science got over the we have science, we don't need religion, and started trying to examine religion honestly as science is supposed to do, science started discovering a lot of this for itself. All I'm doing is getting you up to speed. That's it. That's it. So, I guess that's where I'll leave it for today. That is all for now, kids. Mass is ended. Go in peace. Amen.